Good afternoon and welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. In continuation with the series on sociology of kinship, in today's lecture we are going to understand the way in which feminist rethinking has led to a rethinking of the institution of family itself. So in the previous lectures, we have tried to understand the evolution of family as an institution, the transformations that was taking place, and how it impacted gender relations within family. Now, one of an important way to understand the transformations taking place in society is also to look into how the transformation from agrarian to industrial society was kind of creating certain problems for the institution of family itself. For instance, with the increase in industrialization, there was the problem of increase of the wage earner or the working class. So industrialization constructed a new class, that was the working class, dependent on wage. And this was different from the agrarian society where the dependence was on family production. So from self-sufficiency of home-based consumption, there was a shift to dependence on wage. Now this wage was not kind of taking into consideration the number of family members on the wage earner. So it was kind of a shift from a collective production and consumption to individual wage system, and that wage was dependent on the exchange of goods and services in market. Now this kind of became a creation of crisis within the family. Most of the time, it was insufficient for the survival of the family member. So, when we look into the study of family, earlier we have looked into the economic approach where the market changes impacting gender relations has been kind of problematized by a number of sociologists, and we have in the previous lecture talked about Gary Becker's evolution of family. Now, when we look into how industrialization was impacting the everyday necessity, so you are dependent on a wage which is paid once in a period of time, and that needs to take care of all the survival necessity on a daily basis. So this was kind of moving outside the control of the family into the market, how market would kind of give you a certain kind of wage depending on the work done. So the strategy that was kind of devolved to cope with this strategy was, number one was sharing slim resources with one another. That is, whatever little resource was available, it was to be shared by all members of the family. The second strategy was to organize kind of a movement or a bargaining skill in order to bargain for a better wage and also for a better working condition. Because the understanding was, if the workers were able to have a good working conditions, their health and safety taken into care, a lot of saving of the wage would be done, and therefore they could be able to spend more on the family. The third strategy was to redistribute wealth legally through taxes and illegally through crime. So whatever was kind of earned was not only in terms of spent on consumption, but there were kind of certain ways in which you could save by not paying the taxes or kind of indulging in some kind of deviant behavior where some amount of money could be saved. So as a result, when we are looking into the changes in the market, what became problematic was how it was impacting the interpersonal relations between the family, how it was moving from a collective unit to an individual demand for certain kind of wage, for the necessity of individual income. And therefore, family became a kind of a problem. And it was subject to for a search for a solution to the crisis that was created through industrialization. When we look to family in a sense as an institution, we also refer to family network. Now, network in the sense that when the individuals were migrating from rural area to urban areas, they had not only biological members living together, but they also had their co-workers, they had members from their villages too. So it created a family network in urban area. So the contradictory pressure was in terms of the pull and the push factor. So family pulled closer together, absence of small rural community in cities. So they were kind of the desire to be together with your kin, and therefore the effort would be in urban areas to make sure that you lived with someone who was a part of your family or you were a part of the kin. At the same time, the wage or the living expenses in the city was so high that there was a tendency to live alone or to kind of say away from your family, because if you had the number of members would actually imply that your everyday expenses increase, and that is why there was both the pull and the push factor in terms of a family network in urban areas. Immigrant to cities was sponsored by family and hence remained close-knit. So one of the important contribution when we talk about migration and family was also that many a time people come to know about a job, or they come to the cities as a kind of influence or negotiation by someone in the family. So therefore it's kind of a sponsored job, and the pressure is to live together. We have also in urban areas tried to understand the concept of fictive kin. Male believe relatives or valued friends become honorary family members. So the fictive kinship are basically non-biologically related. If you are working together for a long time, or if you are co-residents of a particular place, you tend to develop a kin relation which is non-biological and therefore termed as fictive. So family as a concept included both biological member and as well as non-family members. So one of the example of a non-family members would be if you start looking into the provision provided, housing provision provided by many private sector to the workers. All workers are put in together in one, say, a rented room or one kind of a dormitory which is provided by the company. And over a period of time, these members residing together, sharing food together, develop a family relation. Now, what creates this transition from the agrarian collective subsistence economy and family as a social unit is to the absence of a common creative project. Now, what is this common creative project? Is that in a traditional agrarian setup, the family was the economic unit of production, and they had a common project, that is to ensure that the production of goods was enough for everyone within the family. And now this family could be a large extended family where everybody was contributing to the production. Now when the family is moving from agrarian subsistence, agricultural economy to the industrial cities where they are doing their individual work, they becomes a kind of an absence of a common creative projects. Individuals starts contributing to their own survival, but separately. So every member of the family would be doing a separate job, and many a time we find that in a particular family you could be finding members from different class. So there could be someone who was working at a low class level work or somebody who is at a high class work. So individual members are earning, but they are earning separately, and members earned different wages by working in different enterprises and different time. Industrial capitalism divided the family into separate individual entities in the labor market. Why industrial capitalism? In the sense that industries were being set up on a large scale, public jobs became significant. So people who the family which was one unit, all taking part in one particular occupation, get separated into different kind of enterprise, different kinds of occupation. So due to these changes, the family underwent transformation and there was a separation at different level. Now, one of the consequence of the separation or the evidence of separation is also, which has kind of increased over the years, is the separation of the parents from the children. So, adult male members most of the time are in the demographic group of being the breadwinner or are the ones who are going to work hard. So the adult male member, they migrate to cities or to other countries to earn more, and therefore the parents and the young ones are left behind. There's a separation, or there is a kind of division within the family in terms of the residential unit. Different kins or non-related person participated in networks of mutual and child care. Now the family, which was kind of a biological unit, gets kind of divided, and we have members of non-biological within that residential group. So there could be a case of a medical emergency or any kind of an economic crisis. The dependency on non-biological member increases. Some families broke apart completely, leaving uncared members in uncared societies. So, and this over the years, even in Indian society, in urban metropolitan cities, the cases of the older elderly generation being left to care for themselves has increased. So the family therefore kind of shifts its function from being a caregiver to kind of a neglect, and therefore the term uncared societies. Other families suffer temporary separation, and the temporary separation is that the members go for their work to other cities and countries, but then they also kind of have a regular visit and they come back and they take care of the dependents. Now, when we look into the idea that the transformation has become a kind of crisis because it has led to disintegration of the family, not only in India, but it kind of was happening on a global level. So the industrial revolution was the beginning of the disintegration when we look into the stages of disintegration. So families started working in factories to maintain cohesion and work together. So therefore the biological linkages were becoming secondary. The third part of the 19th century, the deplorable condition was noticed and government started investigation of the problem. Now, what is the deplorable position is that when there was a large-scale migration to industrial area and industrial capitalism was on the peak, the focus was on the profit. The working conditions of the industrial labor or class was neglected, and when the conditions became extreme, the government had to come into rescue, and therefore a lot of political programs, strategies were done to ensure that the working conditions were improved. So there was kind of different kinds of outcome. One could be at a personal level, where because of the bad working conditions, there was increase in the ill health, shortened life, stunted intellectual development, and the political result was that looking into the working conditions, a lot of political parties and a lot of reformist movements came up through the rescue of this working class. So the social result was that there was a widespread crime and addiction to alcohol and drugs. Crime because the wages that was being earned from these industries were not sufficient for the family members, and therefore there was a high amount of criminal activities as well as addictions to alcohol and drugs. What was the solution out of these crises? A temporary solution was, and that was kind of out of the entire crisis in which the family was, to remove women from the labor market as a part of protective legislation. So the idea was that it was kind of more protective or more concerned about women, that they should not be part of the bad precarious working conditions because they could be subject to ill health and their reproductive health would be affected. So too, it was kind of a temporary solution to remove women from the labor market. What it did was it pushed the male wages to go up to family wage by removing competition in the market. It restricted women to the private domain and assigned them the task of reshaping family more like the middle class. So the middle class idea of the gender division of labor, women doing the private domain and men the public domain, became an ideal type or something that could be a role model for the other class to adopt. So the context of the initial study of family in Europe was kind of looking into the failure of the family, the crisis of the family, and the middle class norms of the family related to gender, related to women task as reproduction was further legitimized. And here we then come into the work which is very important to understand the emergence or the way in which family as a patriarchal institutions emerges was to refer to the work of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. So the major question that these social scientists tried to answer was, how was family affected by changes in the economy? So this became a very important research question, that it was overseen that there was economic change. Now, how was this economic change affecting family and per se the women in the family? Marx and Engels raised this question on two accounts: the pauperism and family dissolution in England and the reports on factory workers. Friedrich Engels wrote on the changes in the form and functions of family in his work, The Condition of Working Class in England, published in 1844, and the second work, which is very important to understand the emergence of the family, is his book, Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State, published in 1884. In this book, Friedrich Engels would kind of argue that because there was an economic transition from collective communal ownership of property to private ownership of property, there was kind of the requirement to take care of private land on domesticated women, animals and your resources. So monogamy as an institution emerged, and women became kind of dependence on trying to take care of the resource and also give rise to the offspring who would then continue the line in the private property. So Marx noted that the effect on women's employment on family life in various places in Capital, that is the book written by Karl Marx, and contrasted bourgeois and proletariat families in Communist Manifesto, another book written, published in 1848. When we look onto his work, we know he's giving us a materialistic interpretation of history and how the change in the means of production is leading to change in social relations, and also how women become the vehicle of reproduction of the labor class. So both Marx and Engels gave a historical understanding of the changes taking place and located the change in the development of industrial capitalism as a way of organizing economic life. They foresaw the continuity in change. Further development of capitalism would entail newer forms of social organization. Besides Marx and Friedrich Engels, another social scientist, Lepley, studied the family in France with the objective to locate an ideal form with stability as main criteria. So the focus of social scientists was to ensure how family as a social institution could become stable. So much of the focus was to see how the transformation was taking place, but family stability should not be disturbed. Lepley defined three major types: traditional, STEM family, and modern family. He considered the STEM family as the most desirable form of family. What was a STEM family? It was a large, multi-generational, and included non-kin like servants. So when we see that there was an increase of residents sharing of food together with non-kin people, non-biological member, the idea of STEM family became a kind of ideal type of an industrialized capitalist society. The STEM family, according to Lepley, was headed by a powerful male patriarch who kept property intact by inheritance through male line. So just as Marx and Engels is giving us the idea of the evolution from matriarchal to a patriarchal family, here is another author hinting that industrial capitalism legitimized the evolution of a patriarchal family where the dominance of male line became important. Other family members could seek their self-interest in a STEM family and could migrate to cities and earn. The STEM family balanced between group interest found in the traditional family and self-interest that was responsible for breaking of modern family. So the STEM family was in between the traditional family and the modern family. However, the growth of industrial capitalism continued to disequilibrate the ideal type. For Lepley, the vulnerable modern family of only 2 generations with divisible property and declining group loyalty as the ideal type. Now we have seen how there was a kind of a change where the family became into crisis. So by beginning of 19th century, we see the contribution of feminist sociologists and anthropologists to understand women's question, and it was kind of analyzed that the family, in a study of family, the women were placed at the bottom of the analysis, and this kind of had to be reformed or rechanged, and a feminist perspective allowed a closer look at individual, the legal and customary right, and constraint within family. By 1920s and 30, a reaction set in, a new psychoanalytical emphasis on the diminishing authority of the father as the source of social problem. So we see within the family transformation was taking place, and there was kind of less significance of the male line, and there was a kind of also the economic depression of 1930, which kind of pitted women against men for employment. So when we look into the idea of understanding family, we need to look into the ways in sociologists like Parson and others kind of legitimize the gender division of labor and consider this division between the emotional and the rational as legitimate and natural. It is this understanding which the feminist sociologists are critical about, and this we will try to see how the feminist rethinking has led to a kind of a different way in which a variation of the study of family has emerged. With this, I come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.